Hello everyone, it's good to be with you again. I'm Victoria Carthew and I'm in the mood to learn, so I hope you are too. Coming up in our English, maths and science lessons, we'll look at using humour in our writing. We'll explore aspects of three-dimensional objects and we will investigate mass and matter. Let's begin with English. Have you ever read a book that was so funny that you could not help but laugh out loud? Does the thought of it make you smile, even now? It's a real skill to use humour in writing, so Rebecca has brought along an expert to explain how it's done.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca, and today I'm really fortunate to be joined by author Adam France. Hi Adam.
Hi Rebecca.
Adam is the author of the book Paddy T and the Time Travelling Trampoline. This very funny book is about Paddy. Paddy is a normal, everyday kid, but what happens to him is anything but ordinary. For Paddy, being a kid means expecting the unexpected, whether it's in his backyard or at his school, or when he's mucking around on his local golf course. Today, Adam is going to talk to us about how he writes his stories and how he manages to use humour to engage his audience. Thanks for joining us today, Adam. So, what type of books do you write and who do you write for?
I write a range of stories for middle to upper primary children. These stories range from being funny and light-hearted to fantastical and scary. I've always loved writing for children. Their imagination is running wild and excitement levels are always high.
Do you only write for children?
I like to write stories that both children and adults can relate to. Many of my stories bring back fond memories of growing up in the 80s and 90s, but are always relevant to what is happening now.
And what actually influenced you to become a writer?
I've been writing stories since I was in primary school. But it wasn't until I became a teacher and found that a number of my students in class, especially boys, were not reading. To them, reading was seen as more of a chore, and I introduced them to some short stories that I grew up reading. Paul Jennings' Unseries and Morris Gleitzman's hilarious books. It wasn't long before all of those books in the library were gone. They were on high demand. Then I decided to write my own short story and read it to the class. They were hooked and kept asking for more. So I did. Seeing kids staring wide-eyed, completely engrossed in my writing was the best feeling ever. I just wanted to write more and more.
It is wonderful that you were able to help your students see how amazing reading is. But how did you do it? What techniques did you use to engage your audience when you were writing?
There are a range of techniques I use to develop engaging stories. Let's look at my story, The Trampoline, as an example. It's a story about how the main character, Paddy, and his brother Troy discover that their trampoline is a portal into the future. Now that I have the main idea of my story, I need to create a situation that becomes problematic and builds tension. In this story, the two boys find each time they travel through the portal, they get older and older until they are really old men. The question is, how do they get back? Through creating moments of tension, my audience is hooked and needs to read on to find out more.
That does sound like quite a problem for the brothers to overcome. As well as an engaging main idea that creates tension, how else do you engage your audience?
There's also the use of repetition in the story.
And repetition is a really useful rhetorical device to use in writing. So repetition is when a word, a phrase or a full sentence, or a poetical line is repeated to emphasise its significance. Is that right?
That's correct. In the story, there is a repeated reference to Dad's ladder as a way to lead the audience to infer what the boys will do next. There is a connection between Dad's ladder and jumping from the roof into the portal. It's the start and escalation of the problem. Another technique that is crucial in writing to create tension and also to portray humour is exaggeration.
Can you remind us what exaggeration is?
When we exaggerate, we talk about something being better or worse than it really is.
And how do you use exaggeration in your stories?
My story, The Nudge, is almost completely an exaggeration. Right from the beginning, I use exaggeration to describe the searing heat of the day. Droplets of my sweat hit the concrete slab and sizzled. The story continues to exaggerate the speed in which Paddy travels down the makeshift slide. I could feel my cheeks pressing hard against my teeth. I wanted to close my eyes, but the sheer speed of my descent wouldn't allow my eyelids to shut. Exaggeration is a fantastic way to pull the reader into the position of the main character and make the reader part of the story. It's also a great way to make a funny situation hilarious.
So why is humour so important in writing?
Humour is the heartbeat of my stories. It's what keeps readers turning the pages. It's what lights up their eyes and puts smiles on faces, especially those who once found reading more of a chore. Although I use quite a bit of exaggeration as a tool to create funny parts in stories, I'm a big believer in relatable humour.
How do you plan for humour in your writing?
All of the stories in Paddy T are loosely based on events that happened to me as a kid, things that have stuck with me for many years. I don't think my experiences as a child were different to the experiences of those reading the story. It's honest humour. I think it's sometimes too easy to entertain readers through toilet humour.
And by toilet humour, you mean poop jokes, right?
That's right. And sure, there's a place for this. But I like to think much of the humour in my writing is based more on experiences many of us have encountered in real life with a dash of exaggeration. Most importantly, it's humour that creates conversation. For example, in my story, The Letterbox, I describe all the different types of letterboxes. The basic box, the Goliath box, the Beast box, and the favourite, the Artsy Fartsy box. These are usually homemade. Some are models of the actual house, or magical chains holding an odd-shaped box, or a mess of scrap metal formed into the shape of an animal. I then go on to describe Paddy's letterbox. We don't even have a letterbox. Dad just stapled the number of our house to a tree out the front and drew an arrow with a black marker to the fork of the lowest branch. But now that that tree has grown, no one can reach the lowest branch. It's relatable humour. What does your letterbox say about you? I've had readers approach me days after reading that story and tell me with smiles spread across their face that they found quite a few artsy-fartsy letterboxes in their street, or that their neighbour has a Goliath box, or worse, a Beast box. It might be subtle humour, but it sticks. It's relatable to kids and adults alike. It's humour that gets people talking and sharing their own experiences. It creates more laughs. It's humour that connects people, and that's why I think it's important.
What advice would you give to young writers to help them develop humour?
Firstly, make a connection between the plot of the story and a really funny life experience. For example, if you're writing a story about a birthday party, try to remember something funny that happened to you or someone you know. Maybe you were once at a party when someone got cake all over their face. Now that you have made that connection, add an element of exaggeration. For example, maybe your character falls into a giant cake and tries to doggy paddle out. Or maybe the icing of the cake is green and the food colouring won't wash out for weeks, and now the school photo shows a great big giant green beard on their chin, and now they have a nickname, Captain Greenbeard. There aren't rules or limitations. The great thing about this humour is that it is relatable. Your readers will immediately connect with it. It's a fantastic hook.
That is fantastic advice for writing a humorous story and engaging the audience. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your stories and how you use different techniques to write humorous and engaging stories. Today, why don't you try writing a short story? Use Adam's advice and use a real-life experience, such as a funny event or situation, as the basis for your writing. Thank you for joining us today. Bye, everyone.
Do you like to draw? And do you like to make things look as though they're jumping off the page, like they're 3D? Did you know that maths can help with that? Next up, Heather's going to show us some of the many ways that three-dimensional objects can be represented.
Hi, I'm Heather. I love 3D movies, especially when the objects come right out at me. Sometimes I even find myself reaching out to touch it. These 3D special effects are designed by animators and illustrators. Before they are computer animated, 3D objects are often drawn. Today, we are going to construct and draw representations of 3D objects. Here are a few 3D objects that you will be familiar with. You'll remember that a 3D object is different to a 2D shape as they have a length, a width and a height. A prism has two congruent facing ends or bases, and all other faces are parallelograms. A pyramid has a polygon base, and all the other faces are triangular. There are also other 3D objects that are not prisms or pyramids, like a cone or a cylinder. One of the ways we can represent 3D objects is by building a model. Let's use toothpicks and modelling clay to construct a square base pyramid. We'll start with the base. As the name suggests, the base of this pyramid is a square. So let's make the base. We need the 4 sides of our square. Three sides and 4 sides. So now we have our base. Now let's make one of the faces. What is the shape of the face? It is a triangle. In fact, all of the faces on the pyramids are triangles. Let's make those. That's 1, 2 triangles, and we put our last one together. Finished. We have our square base pyramid. How many edges does a square base pyramid have? Remember that an edge is a line where 2 faces of a 3D object meet. In this model, the toothpicks represent the edges. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 edges. How many vertices are there? Remember that the vertex is the point on an object where 3 or more edges meet. In this model, the modelling clay is covering our vertices. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 vertices. Now let's try sketching 3D objects from different viewpoints. We can look at a 3D object from the top, also known as the bird's eye view, from the front or from the side. We can record this information in a table. It is important to record our findings so that we can compare different 3D objects and discover patterns or trends. We are going to draw the views in these columns and summarise the 2D shapes in the last column. Here is a rectangular prism. Let's look at and draw the different views. This is the top. What shape is it? It is a rectangle. We can record it in our table. What about the bottom view? What shape is it? It is also a rectangle. Let's record that. What about the front view? What shape is it? It is another rectangle. We can record it. Are you noticing a pattern? What shape do you think the side view will be? Let's look. It is also a rectangle. Now, what 2D shapes make up a rectangular prism? All views of a rectangular prism are rectangles. Do you think that all 3D objects look the same from each viewpoint? Let's try a triangular prism to find out. This is the top. It looks like a triangle. Let's record that. What shape do you think will be on the bottom or the base? It is also a triangle. Let's record that. Do you think the front will also be a triangle? Let's look. It's a rectangle. Let's record that. What shape is the side view? It is also a rectangle. So we can see from our table that a triangular prism has triangles and rectangles. We have discovered that not all 3D objects look the same from each viewpoint. Now that we know the 2D shapes that make up the 3D objects, let's practice identifying 3D objects from their nets. Here we have 3 nets. Which one of these do you think is a triangular prism? Let's look back at our table. We can see a triangular prism have 2 triangles and rectangles. So let's check our nets to see which one has 2 triangles and rectangles. This one does. Let's fold it up and check our answer. It is definitely a triangular prism. Okay, so what 3D object does this net make? Well, we can see that all the faces are rectangles. Let's check our table. It shows us that the faces of a rectangular prism are all rectangles. So this net must be a rectangular prism. Let's fold it and check. It's a rectangular prism. Today we have discovered many ways that we can construct and draw 3D objects. The more you practice drawing in 3D, the better you will become. Have a go at drawing other 3D objects you see around your house. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Now, over the weeks of Learning at Home TV, we have been featuring a segment called My Place that has shared the stories of Queensland school students. There were so many kids who wanted to tell us a bit about their lives and their communities that today we have a special treat because we're hearing from a whole lot of them.
Guy Midarayal Bala, my name is Elena. I'm a Wanyi woman from Lumigi, and I just said hello and good afternoon in language.
My name is Harmony. I live in Edmonton. My father is Aboriginal and my mother is Samoan.
Hi, my name is Georgia. I live in Cairns. My family tribe is Māori people from Innisfail area.
My name's Tiani. I'm descendant of Bachelor and Waka Waka, and this is my garden.
Minide. What I've just said in Manindali language is hello.
Me and my brothers like to stay connected to our culture by practicing the Manindali dances that we've been taught by our elders and our cousins.
In my culture, women are not allowed to play the didgeridoo, but I love to watch them play when they do shakeling.
In my language, we say yawa for goodbye. Yawa.
Guri Jabambia, that means catch you and see you later.
Welcome back. You might already know that matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. But why does matter matter? If you've ever experimented with mixing your own bubble liquid, or put a balloon in the freezer, or created a cake recipe, you just might be a budding materials scientist. Knowing about the properties or characteristics of matter is just as important to us as it is to them. So let's listen closely as Jen talks about some of the properties of solids, liquids and gases.
Did you know that everything around us is made up of matter? Like this table, this cup, even you and me. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. Remember, matter can be a solid, liquid or a gas. Now, I bet you can classify each of these as solids, liquids or gases, but explaining why can be tricky. Today, I've got a challenge for you. Watch carefully and find 3 reasons to explain your classifications. Make sure you remember them because we're going to check them at the end. Okay, let's get started. We need to observe the properties of matter to help us explain why they are a solid, liquid or gas. Let's take a scientific approach and use a table to plan and record our observations. Let's start with the headings. The first column is the state of matter. That is, whether it is a solid, liquid or gas. In the next columns, we'll name the different properties that we observe. Let's start by investigating if the materials have a fixed shape. We will use a tick to show that the state of matter has that property, and a cross will show that it doesn't. Now, if the shape is fixed, it will be rigid. It won't change on its own, and it won't change when I put it in another container. Let's take a look at a solid, these cubes. If we place these cubes in a cup, its shape hasn't changed. It's still a cube, so it's definitely rigid. This means the solid has a fixed shape. Now, what about liquids? When we pour this liquid from a cup into a plastic container, we can see that it no longer has the shape of the cup. It's taken on the shape of the container, so its shape has changed. This means that liquids do not have a fixed shape. Now, let's explore the shape of gases. The gas here takes on the shape of this balloon, but watch what happens when I squeeze it out into the joining balloon. It takes on a new shape. So, is the shape fixed for gases? No, it's not. Okay, we have observed that only solids have a fixed shape, while liquids and gases do not. The second property that we are going to observe is the ability to flow. Flow means to move steadily in a stream or current. Let's take a look at the solid. The solid doesn't flow steadily from the cup to the container, so solids do not flow. Let's record this observation with a cross in the table. Now, watch closely as I pour this cup of liquid into another cup. We're looking to see if the liquid moves in a steady stream. It flows. Let's record this observation with a tick in the table. Now, inside this syringe is air. Let's see if I can move the air down the syringe by pushing on the plunger. Okay, I can feel the air flowing onto my hand. Now, let's try it on the water. So I can also see the air flowing through the water. So gases can flow. Let's place a tick in the table for this observation. Our table now shows that both liquids and gases are able to flow. The last property that we are going to investigate is the ability to be compressed. Something can be compressed if it can be squeezed into a smaller space when pressure is applied. To observe this property, we will use 3 syringes. Now I've placed a solid, liquid and gas into each syringe, and the ends have been plugged to make sure the contents don't escape when we squeeze it. I'll start with the solid. Wow, no matter how much pressure is applied to the solid, it just doesn't compress. Now, what about the liquid? Well, as I apply pressure, I can feel some movement. So I think the liquid is able to be very slightly compressed. That's interesting. I wonder if it can be compressed as much as the gas. Let's try. Wow, that was easy. I could easily push the plunger down the tube. So our table now shows us that both liquids and gases are able to be compressed, but not solids. Overall, we can conclude from our observations of matter that solids, liquids and gases each have a unique combination of properties. Now, how did you go? Did you think of these properties to explain your classifications? Okay, let's recap what we've learnt today. We now know that the three states of matter are solid, liquid and gas, and the properties of shape, flow and compressibility can be used to help us classify matter. Now it's your turn. This afternoon, you might want to search your home for solids, liquids and gases. Or perhaps you can count how many of each state of matter you use at dinner time. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you, Jen. Well, you all have plenty to think about and lots of tasks from your English, maths and science lessons that will keep you busy this afternoon. I hope that you're all super proud of how much you've been learning. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other and remember all of the health and fitness messages that we've been sharing. Bye now.
Authorised by the Queensland Government, Brisbane.